Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for this panel discussion on criminalizing Islam, the Western European panel discussion. So why are MPACUK UK doing this event, Criminalizing Islam? The simplest and bluntest answer to this question is that we see normative Islamic practices being used as markers for extremism. What does that mean in plain English? It means that, for example, if a child expresses an Islamic opinion in school, he may be interviewed by police. It means that so-called counter-violent extremism or preventing violent extremism, CVE or PVE for short, these policies single out Muslims when they are applied on a national level. This event is the Western Europe panel and will be the first of a series, inshallah, as we track the spread of counter-violent extremism legislation and its subsequent impact on Muslims around the world. Case in point would be the UN Security Council Resolution 2178, which bound nations to CVE and PVE policies. As a community, we need to realize that we must be alert to the spread of these policies in other countries because they will end up on our own doorstep too. But we as Muslims should take heart too. If we can defeat such legislation in our own countries, not only have we stopped it here, but we can help and train other Muslims to tackle it elsewhere too. The saga begins in the Netherlands thanks to two key documents: Recruitment for the Jihad in the Netherlands, From Recruitment to Trends, and a memo titled Counter-Terrorism in the Netherlands. So we will start our discussion there. Before we start, we have some simple ground rules. The chat function is for any questions, which will be answered in the Q&A at the end, inshallah. The chat is not for provoking or responding to provocation. Anyone who breaks this simple rule will be removed. Questions from our Zoom audience will be prioritized. And if there's time, we will come to questions from our Facebook audience. To join in on Zoom at our next event, book a ticket on Eventbrite and look out for updates on our social media. And lastly, if you want to see more of these kinds of events, join our team as a volunteer. There will be links in the chat. So we have with us Brother Rayan Freschi, based in France. He is a legal expert with degrees in human rights, humanitarian law, and child protection. He was a former caseworker for the dissolved Collective Against Islamophobia in France, the CCIF. He is now a researcher for CAGE UK. It gives me great pleasure to host him in today's event. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So yeah, indeed, as Dr. Leila said, CVE cannot be regarded exclusively as a set of powers that is criminalizing Islam, and I will try to build on that very good remark, inshallah, and I will try to prove during this quick presentation that in the French case, CVE ultimately led to the establishment of a proper Islamophobic persecution, inshallah. I'm going to start my presentation back in 2015, right after the series of attacks that took place in France, the attacks on Charlie Hebdo, the attacks on the Bataclan. And I'm going to start there because in 2015, after these attacks, the state decided to establish what is called a state of emergency. Now, what is a state of emergency? It's basically an exceptional feature of the rule of law. It's a situation where the state is given exceptional powers that are meant obviously to be temporary, and these exceptional powers are given to the state because it needs to basically protect national security. Now, more specifically, it allows the state to pronounce, for example, house arrests more easily. It allows the state to close down places of gathering more easily, and it also allows the state to organize raids, basically, in a more efficient manner. And the state of emergency was declared in 2015, and it lasted until 2017. And during this span of 2 years, thousands of raids were organized, and obviously, as you can easily imagine, they targeted almost exclusively the Muslim community. We're talking about thousands of raids in basically 2 years. And at the end of 2017, the first step that is essential to notice here is that the state of emergency was supposed to stop, but the French government had the brilliant idea to adopt a specific law which basically normalized the state of emergency. What do I mean by that? Okay, fine, the state of emergency is ended. It's no longer there. But the exceptional powers that are given to the state during the state of emergency were basically becoming part of the common legislation. So now, as part of the common legislation, the state can very easily pronounce house arrest and raids and so on and so forth. So that's the first key step towards the establishment of a proper Islamophobic persecution. So basically the law, the state of emergency were about struggling about terrorism. Okay, fine. But what they decided to do afterwards was, okay, fine. Can we properly address or prevent what is actually leading to terrorism? And that's when in 2018, they decided, and I mean the government, decided to create and implement a secret plan, a secret public policy, which aim was to prevent, target radicalization. And radicalization in France, and not just in France, obviously, as you know, is to be established through a series of indicators. And these indicators only describe orthodox Islamic beliefs and Islamic practices. So, for example, wearing the beard, not having a mustache, prayer, for example, are nothing but indicators of radicalizations in the eyes of the French state. So they started that public policy back in 2018, and it was completely secret. There's actually, when they started it, there was no document proving the very existence of that policy. And it's only 1.5 years later, back in November 2019, when we actually discovered the very existence of the policy. This is when a Minister of the Interior, the former Minister of the Interior, unveiled the policy and explained that, yes, it was about targeting radicalization, and it was about using the entire legislation, the entire set of powers that were granted to the state in order to obstruct radicalization. So that's an important element that to be taken into consideration. Back in 2015, we were talking about terrorism. So trying to use the specific laws that were the specific anti-terror laws. Right now, in 2018 and 2019, it wasn't about the anti-terror laws anymore. It was about the entire set of powers. The entire legislation was to be used in order to obstruct in any form what was called radicalization. Then that specific policy was rebranded. It wasn't about radicalization anymore. It was about targeting and obstructing using the entire set of powers given to the state. It was about obstructing Islamism and what they call communitarian withdrawal, but basically Islamism. And again, Islamism was described through through indicators that described normal Islamic beliefs and Islamic practices. So in 2019, that policy was implemented on the entire territory, on the entire national territory of France. Again, in 2020, Emmanuel Macron, who is as you know, the French president, decided to rebrand once again that public policy and said that now they were not going to target radicalization. It wasn't about Islamism anymore. It was about Islamist separatism. And this is basically when he announced the future anti-separatism law that was adopted in August 2021. Now, what's the key point of the anti-separatism law? It's a huge legal reform whose aim is to give more power to the state in order to obstruct what they call Islamic separatism, which is nothing but Islam and normative beliefs, Islamic normative beliefs, and Islamic orthodox practices, basically. Now, I'm going to wrap it up, inshallah, but I just want to end by giving you the overall results of the policy. And the policy is entirely a systematic obstruction policy. It led to the investigation, the checks of more than 24,000 establishments in France. By establishments, I mean mosques, I mean Islamic schools, and I mean businesses that are run by Muslims. On average, that means that since 2018, 24 establishments are to be investigated on a daily basis in France. That also means that 700 establishments have been closed since 2018. On average, that means that 15 establishments are closed a month. Again, by establishment, I mean mosque, Islamic schools, or any kind of businesses run by Muslims. The policy also led to the seizure, the confiscation of more than 46 million euros. On average, that means that since 2018, 10 million euros are confiscated from the community, which, by the way, is already impoverished, on a yearly basis. So the data, the shocking data, only demonstrates the existence of a state-led Islamophobic persecution right now in France. And it's obviously a huge challenge in here, but what needs to be tackled as well is the fact that France is trying to share its approach, its very radical approach, its draconian approach to other EU countries. It's basically trying to share its approach with Belgium, Denmark, and obviously Austria as well, inshallah. It also needs to be added that France right now is the president of the EU. They took the presidency, and under the French presidency, the EU is co-chairing an institution, a CVE institution, with the very democratic and the very democratic state that is Egypt, right? So it's very clear that France really has a terrible approach, a very draconian approach, and the challenge in the near future is to make sure that obviously its Islamophobic persecution stops in here, and the challenge is obviously to make sure that it doesn't spread to other EU nations, inshallah. And I'll wrap it up.
Jazakallah khairan, brother Rayan, especially for hitting us with those hard numbers. I mean, since 2018, a Muslim institution is being investigated on average every hour. And knowing, as you've told us, knowing that France is actively trying to push these legislations, these practices to as many countries around Europe as it can, just hammers home, you know, the opening point and the whole purpose of this event and the series, which is that Muslims have to be awake and alert to this threat, not just what's on our own doorstep, but what is being shifted onto our doorstep as well. I thank every speaker who has stayed on with us. With the most grateful. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah reward you with better. We will end the live stream there.